Good evening, everybody. It is, what is it, Wednesday? I think so. Doesn't matter. Good to see y'all. We're going to talk about the Dade Massacre tonight. We're going to talk about firsthand accounts of it, because when you get, participant testimony, sometimes there's some discrepancies in there. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the upcoming Dade Massacre episode, which should be out tomorrow night. It's long awaited. It is in the editing process, the finalization process, as I like to call it. I just kind of made it up, but I'm really looking forward to you guys seeing this one. This stream's going to be about an hour long. I'm going to try to keep it at that because I got to finalize this episode. What else? Oh, yeah. And my internet, of course, is being kind of weird. So if I cut out, don't panic. I'll come back. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think I got it solved, but just a heads up. What's up, Mark? What's up, Seth Weil? It's 10 o'clock where I'm at right now. It was, in fact, 9:59 when you sent that message, just to be specific. Let's see. Mr. Sweeney. Oh, yeah, we have proof of life of Nick Sweeney. Nick Sweeney is back, everyone. He left us a message at 7:24. Hopefully, we will see him soon in the chat. Josh, what's up, man? We will. I know. I told Sweeney that everyone in the chat was going to be fired up to see him. I'll lean on you a little bit tonight too, Josh. This is going to be a seminal heavy episode. And it is just such a brutal story. You know what happened is it happened, I think, 3 months before the Alamo. So it blew up. It was just like headline news everywhere for about 3 months. And then the Alamo kind of overtook it. This is also the start of the second Seminole War. The first Seminole War was kind of more about settling, and I'm really kind of summarizing it quickly here, but it's more about land agreements and kind of pushing the Spanish out and the Seminole out. The second Seminole War is for all the marbles. This is the beginning of that, and there's so many elements to this. We're going to talk about Chief Alligator. We're going to talk about, there's really 3 total survivors that make it from the massacre site back to Fort Brooke. But we're going to talk about the account of, I guess we'd call him the preeminent survivor, Ransom Clark. Cool name. Good name. Good, like, millennial Midwest acoustic emo band name. Then the last one, Chief Alligator. Oh, and we're going to talk about Pacheco, who is a particularly interesting, controversial to some degree character, and an inspiring guy. I think when you suss everything out, this guy is a bad A, as they would say in the Mormon community. I'm not Mormon. I'm just saying. Theo, what's up, man? Bama Deanna, good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, we're waiting on the return of Mr. Sweeney. He left us a message, so we're hoping to see him soon. The accounts that I'm going to be using tonight, I drew from, let's see, what is the actual title of this? Now I'm going to lose where I was. This is titled Last Command, The Dade Massacre by W.S. Steele. There isn't a date on it, but I believe it was written in 1993. I'm going to post it in the chat now. It's a really enjoyable read. I'm going to pull the firsthand accounts out of it, but as an article in its totality, it's really good. I think it's a great primer for the episode. In the episode itself, there are so many characters. There's Dade himself. There are the other officers in charge who each go down in their own uniquely horrific, very sad in the sense that, like, it's just sad to see good men lose their lives in war, and memorable ways. And there's so many sub stories in it that I think it merits at least 1 or 2 more live streams. What else are we going to cover? We're going to cover a little bit about the terrain, because this is in Central Florida. So it's, to my understanding, Josh can certainly correct me, it's Everglades. So I refer to it as a swamp, but it's not like the deep swamp. The massacre itself occurs in this kind of palmetto grove area that really is a transition zone between these pine barrens that they come out of. And that's where they're really scared, is in these pine barrens, tall trees, and the entire, let me kind of preface this. We have a company of army soldiers who are being sent on what is essentially a self-deletion mission. They pretty much assume it's a self-deletion mission. They're pretty much right, long story short. But they are sent from Fort Brooke in where I believe Tampa Bay is today, up northeast to Central Florida. And they are headed to Fort King. And in the middle is some of the most contested and dangerous territory in the whole Florida territory. Seminole attacks have been on the rise. There's much contention over who's going to own this land and settler encroachment. And there's already been kind of brewing tensions after the first Seminole War. So they are walking along on their en route to Fort King, and just when they think they've kind of gotten to a relatively safe area, that they're out of the danger zone, that is when the ambush is unleashed. The Seminole have set everything up hours in advance. This has been planned weeks in advance. They've been waiting in the surrounding pines. Like there's a pine barren and then around, a palmetto grove. So it's like, think like mini palm trees, like a big expanse, a football field of mini palm trees. And then surrounding this football field of mini palm trees are tall pines, and they're thick enough that you really can't see through them. So this is where the Seminole have set up their attack. They're waiting for the contingent of soldiers to get, for their officer who's in front to basically get about 3/4 of the way into this palmetto grove. And then they're going to take out the officer first. And they are targeting the officers in general. They understand that the officers command the troops. And if you take out the officers, the troops will by and large fall into chaos, and it'll be much easier to swoop in on them and annihilate them. This is not a matter of taking prisoners. This is an annihilation mission for the Seminole from the get-go, and they essentially accomplish it. You'll see in the episode an interesting kind of caveat. The Seminole chiefs I think they're in a bit of a hurry. Nothing is really specified in the sources to their exact motivation to this, but they relegate their soldiers, to their warriors, to only taking ammunition and weapons off the soldiers and general sundry and supplies, right? But they're not allowed to harvest. The Seminoles themselves are not allowed to harvest scalps. They're not allowed to spend a lot of time harvesting trophies. There is another contingent of Seminoles who are known as Black Seminoles. They're either descendants of escaped slaves who joined the Seminole tribe, who were very open to escaped slaves joining their tribe, or escaped slaves themselves who have joined the tribe. But they are particularly incensed at the army soldiers for understandable reasons, as they are part of the machinations which kept them enslaved. So there is a real extra animus there between the Black Seminole warriors and the army soldiers. And the Black Seminole really do take the time to make sure that every soldier is eliminated, and they will harvest the scalp. So that's just to say there's some unique little extras to this battle that I think are worth exploration. There's 3 Seminole chiefs involved here. Oteamathla, he's also known as Jumper in some of the accounts. Alligator, who we're going to be reading his account tonight as well, which is Chief Alligator. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. And I'm blanking on the last guy. Oteamathla, Alligator. Oh, I can't believe this. I've been reading his name all day. Oteamathla, Alligator, and oh shoot, it's not Osceola. Josh, you helping me out? Micanopy. Thanks, bro. Thanks. I've read it all day. I've been in the script all day, and of course I blank on it now. And Micanopy, right? They will work as kind of a 3-piece unit. The Seminoles are similar to a lot of tribes where the chief there aren't day-to-day chiefs who are in charge of absolutely everything in Seminole life so much. But on the war trail, the chiefs have absolute authority, and it's a way of, minimizing chaos. So Oteamathla, or Jumper, Alligator, and Micanopy all have absolute authority. And you'll see in the episode, in the battle, some of their warriors kind of say, like halfway through, I think we've done a pretty good job. And they're right. They're right. Like they've basically taken everybody out, and they're being kind of forced to make additional charges, and it's getting a little dangerous for them. And they kind of go, the younger warriors go like, I think we've done a pretty good job here. Let's call it a day. And Chief Alligator, he can't, his authority is absolute, but only if the warriors want to follow him in battle. When they decide they're done, they are free to leave. So he has to kind of convince them to keep fighting. And he reads them the riot act. It's going to be in the episode specifically, but he calls them all kinds of names, none of which are PC. He insults them by asking them if they're women. He's like, "Oh, you guys a bunch of women?" And it's like, which is, I mean, he's inferring that it is the gravest of insults, right? So it's a very interesting speech to read. It's borderline funny, and it works. It gets the warriors to continue their charge. But the entirety of this battle from the soldiers' viewpoint is horrific. It is, I've compared it, I think, in a previous live stream to the scene in Platoon where the base is getting overrun. The soldiers have to hunker down. They basically have to build their fort ad hoc in the middle of this battle. When the Seminole pull back after the initial attack, where like 80% of the guys are unalived anyways, the 20% that are left have 2 officers left, and they order the men to cut down a bunch of the pine trees, all the pine trees they can, while the Seminoles are gone, and then make this kind of triangle fort where they stack the logs up like this, and then the guys are inside. But it's like basically useless. It's like a rail fence, right? There's big gaps in between the logs. It's better than nothing, but not much better than nothing. And they have to fight from this position as the Seminoles send. It's not one attack. The Seminoles send wave after wave for hours. They disable the soldiers' cannon, which is kind of like their last hope. The young soldiers, who are same as today, 18 to 22 mostly, are freaking out. This is a lot of their first time in combat. It almost makes it worse that they thought it was coming, and they thought this attack was going to come. Then they thought they were safe, and then the attack actually comes. So it's just a nightmare for these guys. Then they watch their officers get cut down one by one. One is shot through the legs and collapses. One is shot several times in the torso, walks over to a tree and collapses. The last officer is completely disabled, but he has 2 shotguns, effectively shotguns. And just as they're about to be overrun, he says, "Well, I got 4 barrels for him." And it's like, wow, it's a pretty cool way to go out. But regardless, he goes out, right? Then everyone is overrun. The Seminoles start going person to person, body to body, and making sure the guys are unalive. It's brutal. And then one guy jumps up and begs for his life. They unalive him. One guy jumps up and I think clubs one of the warriors over the head, unalives him, and he starts running away, and he at least tries, but the Seminole catch him. Then Ransom Clark and a young private, they're both privates, Ransom Clark and Private Edwin DeCourcy, possibly, but I'm going to go with DeCourcy, escape on foot, and they go into the Everglades. They decide they're going to make their way back to Fort Brooke because it's a longer route, but at least it takes them out of Seminole territory. So it's like, all right, you got to pick between the lesser of 2 terrible choices, basically. So they're making their way back, and they go for about a day and a half, and they're thinking like, okay, maybe we can do this. And then they spot a couple Seminole warriors on horses searching for him. There's a big search party out for him. And they decide, in this case, it might be one of the rare instances where splitting up was the right thing to do, but they decide we're going to split up. So they split up. Poor Edwin DeCourcy gets run down. Ransom Clark has one of those moments, inexplicable moments, where a warrior just pulls up short on him and then turns around and leaves. It's very cinematic. Like the warrior charges at him. He's for sure like, oh, the Seminole have caught me. This is over. And the lone warrior that's found him just turns around and goes back. So doesn't really make a lot of sense, but that's all that he knows. So he's going to talk about that in his account. Alligator is going to recount their entire victory. Oh, just sum that up real quick. Clark makes it all the way back to Fort Brooke. He is the first of the 3 survivors to make it back. 2 more straggle in. They're basically all kind of the Walking Dead, right? One of them succumbs to his wounds. The other, I believe, survives, and Clark is the only one who left his testimony. But none of the Alligator and Pacheco, the escape. Okay, we got to talk about Pacheco real quick too. Okay, Pacheco is actually a slave at this time who was brought up from the Caribbean to be leased. This is all. I understand how terrible this is. I'm just telling you what happened. Okay, he is leased out by his owner. Quote. I'm doing the air quotes if you're just listening. Okay. To the army. I'm talking in general terms here, but he's leased out to the army effectively for his skills in tracking, in languages, like he speaks multiple languages, and mostly tracking, scouting, and languages. But he can kind of do it all of the frontier tasks that need to be done. He can do it. He and a number of guys who run dogs like bloodhounds, they are sent out every morning as kind of a forward scouting contingent, right? On the morning of the attack, it's only Pacheco who is sent out. They kind of think that they're in the clear, so they don't send the dogs out. There are really interesting accounts of these dogs too, and they were all unalived in the battle as well. They didn't make it. Sucks. Pacheco, though, kind of disappears, and there's varying accounts on whether he was taken prisoner by the Seminole, adopted into the Seminole, or whether he sold Dade and his men out, which would, they weren't his buddies, so to speak, to the Seminole and set them up for this. I think he's made a bit of. It'd be interesting to see Josh, what you think about this. Give me your comments on this in the chat. But I think he's made a bit of a scapegoat. I don't think that he sold them out. I think he just escaped to go live with them. But his account has drawn a little bit of criticism, but I think it's by people who are generally trying to find a reason of why this happened. Like, how did the army get caught this off guard? They just, it's an absolute annihilation on the part of the Seminoles. Also, while this is all happening, Chief Osceola, who is the other of the 4 chiefs, he's kind of like the dude with the most aura in the Seminole, right? At this time, he's conspicuously absent because he's settling a personal vendetta that he has with the Indian agent at Fort King named Wiley Thompson. Fantastic villain name, and if you could just imagine what you think Wiley Thompson looks like, that's exactly what he looks like. So Osceola takes a bunch of his boys and goes to Fort King, and he knows that Wiley Thompson goes on his little afternoon jaunt, his little walk outside the fort gates every afternoon. So Osceola and his boys just hang out outside Fort King for a couple hours. Wiley goes on his walk. They shoot him down. They actually go down there and scalp him, and then divide his scalp amongst everybody. Everybody gets a little piece as a souvenir. So they missed the entire Dade Massacre, which Osceola is kind of bummed about. They meet up that night. They have a bonfire, a celebration get together, right? And Osceola shows up and he's like, "Hey, looks like things went well." And they're like, "Hey, how'd it go for you?" And he's like, "I got these little pieces of scalp. You want one?" And the Seminole had a real good time that day. They had a good day. But yeah, this was oh man, you can't really understate how brutal this was. If you think of this in terms of a World War II Pacific theater engagement deep in the jungles of, I don't know, whatever, Southeast Pacific theater, or Vietnam, somewhere deep in the jungles of whatever, northeastern Vietnam, Cambodia. It's like that. It's not the same jungle, but it's just close quarters fighting, incredibly brutal. It gets hand to hand at the very end, and these guys were the soldiers were terrified. They died in a state of horror. Like they knew what was coming. Their morale ebbed and flowed. They'd get terrified, and the officers would talk them down. I mean, these are kids, not kids, but 18 to 22-year-olds freaking out, having what you would effectually know today as a panic attack, calming down, being forced again to fight for their lives. Then somebody else has a panic attack, and then they're calmed down by the officers. the whole while. They can safely assume they're going to be overrun. It's just wave after wave after wave of Seminole attacks. So it's just, not only are they brutally unalived, it is a terrifying few hours leading up to it. So it's just a fascinating and really dark story. So we're going to jump into the firsthand accounts here. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Right? Just kind of, that prefaces what we're about to get into here. Okay, we got a lot of chats. Great. Family, a long and stressful day. Been in court with my granddaughter. Oh, I hope everything went well. Good to see you. I'm glad you made it, though. We always hope to see Bama Deanna. Yeah, OG. What's up, Space Cowboy? Fort King is near Ocala, Florida, says Josh. Okay, I'll lean on you for the geography here. There are so many alligators currently that they are moving north to South Carolina. Yeah, I try to say anywhere. I try to put as much space between myself and alligators as I can. I think those channels would change with the storms in Florida. Are there storms in Florida? We had a terrible one in Austin right now. The Seminole were trying to make a statement. Yes, they were, absolutely. And they made one. They really, people were riled up nationwide about, obviously think of a nation about a quarter of the size as the one we have today, but in that nation, they were riled up. This was a big, big deal. I'm gonna scroll through these real quick and we'll get to everybody at the end here. Make sure you like the chat as well. If you're in here, make sure to subscribe. If you haven't, I think it's like 85% of our viewers aren't subscribed. So if you're in here, just click subscribe, click the like button. That's all we ask. If you really want to get your chat seen, a super chat really helps because it pops up on the bubble. Any like $2 super chat, I will for sure see it. There's a lot of chats that flow in here, and your support is greatly appreciated. Any and all support. It's not attacks like the Comanche would do, charging and charging. This is more of a sniper game. True. Okay. Yeah, but they're kind of okay. They are. It seems like they're waging a charge, right? Taking a little ground. So think of it like this: they're in the pines, and it's wage a charge, take a little ground. They're not hitting. They're not coming all the way in to hit the. This is kind of a triangular enclosure, but the Seminole are out here, and they'll take a little ground, and take a little ground, and take a little ground, and take a little ground over, hours and hours of time, and then by the end, they are just right into making a final charge and then taking the enclosure over. And again, I can't overstate how flimsy and essentially useless this enclosure was, this ad hoc fort, which is a term I tend to use the term ad hoc fort a lot in this show, but there's a lot of ad hoc forts where dudes just had to grab whatever they could and make a little fort. Not, I guess you got to call it a fort. Let's see. Yes, they're closing ground, fighting bush to tree to bush. Yeah, okay. And I really should make that clearer. Yes. So it's not, just to clarify, not full on charges from the cover that they're in to the enclosure, right? This is a gradual process of closing in and closing in and closing in and finally making their final attack. Nick Citron, what's up, man? Maximus Meridius Platypusicus. Great name. Cheers. What's up, man? Let's see. Okay, I think I'm ready to jump into it. So the first account we're going to be looking at is Ransom Clark. Now, I want to preface this as well with this. All of these accounts are on the scale of hard to read, 1 to 10. They're about an 8. So keep that in mind. The punctuation in these is very spotty, and the spelling and phrasing as well. So we're going to go phrase by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, and kind of break this down. But Ransom Clark's statement of the massacre, one thing to note too, before we start, promise we're going to start, is you'll get varying accounts in these 3 accounts of when exactly the battle started. Okay. It was 8 o'clock. Suddenly, I heard a rifle shot in the direction of the advanced guard, and this was immediately followed by a musket shot from that quarter. Captain Fraser had rode by me a moment before in that direction, and I never saw him afterwards. I had not time to think of the meaning of those shots before a volley, as if from 1,000 rifles, poured in upon us from the front and all along our left flank. So he is talking about they're riding through this palmetto grove, and the officer rides by him. They're in a big long line, and the Seminole have waited for Dade, who's riding at the front, who is the commanding officer, to get to a particular spot where most of the soldiers are inside the palmetto grove, and they're not able to retreat because they're in this big long line, and then they strike. Okay, back to the account here. And also the Seminole start firing, and if you're riding this way, the Seminole are here and on this side, and then the fire explodes all around them. They have really walked into a trap here. Continuing on, I looked around me, and it seemed as if I was the only one left standing in the right wing. That's essentially true from what we understand from all the accounts. The first volley took almost everybody out. Neither could I, until several other volleys had been fired at us, see an enemy. And when I did, I could only see their heads and arms peering out from the long grass, far and near, and from behind the pine trees. So they're spread out. He calls it grass, but they're like, yes, it's tall grass, and they're not little tiny palm trees, but they're short-ish palm trees. And you can't really pick out one individual Seminole. They're just kind of silhouettes everywhere. It's worst case scenario. This really sucks. The ground seemed to me to be an open pine barren, but no hammock near that I could see. I never really understood what that line meant. No hammock near that I could see, to be frank with you guys. On our right and a little to our rear was a large pond of water some distance off. All around us were heavy pine trees, very open, particularly towards the left, and abounding with long, high grass. The first fire of the Indians was the most destructive, seemingly killing or disabling one half of our men. And that's why okay, eyewitness accounts say half. It's at least half. Usually it's a lot of guys. It's a lot of guys in that just first attack. We promptly threw ourselves behind trees and opened a sharp fire of our musketry. I, for one, never fired without seeing my man. That is, his head and his shoulders. While the Indians chiefly fired lying or squatting in the grass. Lieutenant Bassinger fired 5 or 6 rounds of canister from the cannon. So this was a small turning point where they went from the first little turning point was when they were able to set up the cannon. Lieutenant Bassinger is going to be the officer in charge of the artillerymen. It's a 6-pound cannon, so it's not a big, huge cannon, but that means it fires 6-pound cannonballs. So they're pretty big. But those only take out what's directly in front of them. They're more of a psychological weapon than anything. The canister shot that they switched to is essentially a big, giant shotgun shell. It just fires in a giant reverse funnel. I don't know. But it's not only psychologically devastating, it is really effective, and it really starts to drive the Seminole away momentarily. It is at first very effective. This appeared to frighten the Indians, and they retreated over a little hill to our left, over this way, 1/2 or 3/4 of a mile off, after firing not more than 12 or 15 rounds. So it drives them a ways away. It really that first wave of they call it grape shot, but canister shot as well, because the shotgun pellets, let's say, that come out of it are about the size of a grape. Grapes are shrinkflation, and grape is like that big today. We immediately then began to fell trees and erect a little triangle breastwork. So this is where they first driven the Seminoles away, and that buys them the time to cut down the trees and start building their little breastwork. I don't want to get flagged on YouTube, so it's easier to say fort. You never know what they're going to flag. But this is also where the Seminole have retreated back to the tree line. And while these guys are constructing their little fort, Alligator is chewing his dudes out, like poking them in the chest and challenging them. So while the army is building the fort here, the Seminole are having their own kind of turning point moment back about 3/4 of a mile away. Continuing on, some of us went forward to gather cartridge boxes from the dead and to assist the wounded. I had seen Major Dade fall to the ground by the first volley, and his horse dashed into the midst of the enemy. Whilst gathering the cartridges, I saw Lieutenant Mudge sitting with his back reclining against a tree. his head fallen and evidently dying. I spoke to him, but he did not answer. The interpreter, Luis, I've heard different pronunciations. This is Pacheco. The interpreter, Luis Pacheco, it is said, fell by the first fire. And then in parentheses, he kind of amends himself. Parentheses, we have since learned that this fellow was, we have since learned that this fellow shammed death, means like he avoided it, that his life was afterwards spared through the intercession of the chief jumper, which is Ote Niamathla, and that being an educated, bad word that they used to say for Black people, not the worst, but the second worst, okay? Say that. He read all of the dispatches and letters that were found about the dead to his victors. This is why they really wanted to, quote unquote, hire him, because he could read dispatches. He was multilingual, spoke several indigenous languages, spoke English. I believe he spoke French as well. So just a super, like they say, educated, very, very adept gentleman. But yes, he finds out later that, his initial account was a little flawed. We had barely raised our breastwork knee high. So it's very, very small. Like, it's just like, man, it's almost like sadder. Like, I wish he kind of didn't do anything. When we again saw the Indians advancing in great numbers over the hill to our left, they came on. Oh, also, little thing here. While the Seminole are back there getting their butts chewed out, a bunch more Seminole come in. And they're kind of like, oh, come on, guys, you can't wuss out now. So there are even more Seminole, or at least enough to replace any damage that the army has done so far. They boldly came, still doing pretty good, right? They came on boldly till within a long musket shot, when they spread themselves from tree to tree to surround us. We immediately extended as light infantry, covering ourselves by trees and opening a brisk fire from cannon and musketry. The former, I don't think, could have done much mischief, as the Indians were so scattered. Meaning the cannon now, they were running out of grape shot, so it really can't do a lot because the Seminole are so spread out. And also, it's interesting that they know what musket range is, so the Seminole all stay together until they're just outside of musket range, and then they spread out and get into their formation, get into their positions. Continuing on, we had barely raised our breastwork. Oh no, that's where I was. Captain Gardner, Lieutenant Basinger, and Dr. Gatlin were the only officers left unhurt by the volley which killed Major Dade. Lieutenant Henderson had his left arm broken, but he continued to load his musket and firing it, resting on the stump until he was finally shot down towards the close of the second attack. And during the day, he kept up his spirits and cheered the man. So, it's kind of convoluted how they wrote that, but it means Lieutenant Henderson fought on. The officers were really critical here because the men were so young and inexperienced. Even their example of being injured and fighting on really enabled the men to even fight on as much as they did. So Lieutenant Keyes is injured here and cheering his boys on the whole day. He's leaning up against a stump, firing a musket with one hand, meaning you can get off, I don't know, one shot a minute if you're lucky. Not very much. He's not able to pour out a lot of firepower. And eventually he's shot down as well. They knew who the officers were, and they targeted the officers. And here it really shows, because all of the officers were unalived before the rest of the men were unalived. Lieutenant Keyes had both his arms broken in the first attack. A ball went through both of his arms, just whack, whack, went right through and broke both of his arms. His arms were bound up and slung in a handkerchief, and he sat for the remainder of the day until he was killed, reclining against the breastwork. This one freaked me out too, because he's basically just laying back like this, and there's nothing he can do. He can't even fight. And then they shoot him down, laying against the breastwork. Regardless of everything that was passing around him, he was laying back, and nothing, he couldn't do anything but lay back, because even with all the things happening around him, that's what he's saying. I know we have a lot of things that have gone wrong today, but I feel like our phrasing of things has gotten a lot better, because some of these old accounts, A little slippery. It's like walking on ice. Continuing on, our men were by degrees all cut down, meaning kind of one by one, 2, 3, just piece by piece. We had maintained a steady fight from 8 a.m. until 2 p.m. or thereabouts, and allowing 3/4 of an hour interval between the first and second attack, meaning there's about 45 minutes between that first attack, then the kind of nominal, ostensible retreat, and then the second attack. And we had been pretty busily engaged for more than 5 hours. Lieutenant Basinger was the only officer left alive, and he was severely wounded. He told me as the Indians approached to lay down and to feign myself dead. I looked through the logs and saw, this is his words, I looked through the logs and saw savages approaching in great number. A heavy-made Indian of middle stature, a stocky dude who's about, 5'8", painted down to the waist, corresponding in description to Micanopy, means he thinks this is Micanopy, and who seemed to be a chief. He made then a speech, frequently pointing to the breastwork. He doesn't know what he's saying, but Micanopy's like, let's go get those guys. But he doesn't know what Micanopy is saying exactly, but he knows like he's going to go, you got to go take the little fort. At length, they charged into the breastwork, and there was none to offer resistance, and they did not seem to suspect the wounded of being alive, offering no indignity, but stepping about carefully and quietly stripping off accoutrements, and carrying away our arms. They then retired in a body of the direction from whence they came, meaning this is what we talked about, where Ransom Clark finds this curious that they don't stop and scalp everybody and take all their stuff, and he makes note of it, right? Immediately upon and he says, the Seminole grouped up after going through everybody and then just went away. He doesn't know where they went, but he knows they went away, and he hopes he can survive now. Immediately upon their retreat, 40 or 50, bad word again, on horseback galloped up and alighted, tied their beasts, and commenced with horrid shouts and yells the butchery of the wounded, gathering with an indiscriminate plunder, stripping the bodies of the dead of clothing, their watches, money, and everything else, and splitting open the heads of all those who showed the least sign of life, with their axes and their knives, and accompanying their bloody work with obscene and taunting derisions, and with frequent cries of, "What have you got to sell?" So there's a real vehemence on display here, where they're not only taking all of the trophies, let's say, but they're taunting everybody. They're taunting the wounded that are left alive as they unalive them. It is a particularly, I'm trying to think of the right word, vindictive scene. Continuing on, Lieutenant Basinger heard the bad word, butchering the wounded, at length, and sprang up and asked them to spare his life. So in this account, I don't know, Ransom is the guy who saw it. So I don't think Alligator's account corresponds with this, but Ransom in particular is the only guy who says it was Basinger. Everything else that I've read just kind of points to a random soldier. It doesn't say it was Basinger. So take that for what you will. In the episode, I don't specify that it's Basinger, but Ransom Clark says that it was the officer Lieutenant Basinger that springs up and begs them to spare his life. They met him with the blows of their axe and their fiendish laughter. Having been wounded in 5 places myself, I was pretty well covered with blood, and 2 scratches that I had received on my head gave me the appearance of having been shot through the brain. After catching, and the black Seminole, after catching me by the heels, threw me down, saying, "Damn him, he's dead enough." So they think he's dead. So they think, okay, he's fine, or leave him alone. They then stripped me of my clothes, shoes, and my hat, and left me. After stripping all the dead in this manner, they had trundled off the cannon in the direction of the Indians. They had trundled off the cannon in the. That's a tough transition. They had trundled off the cannon in the direction that the Indians had gone and went away, meaning that when they left, they took the cannon with them, and ultimately they threw the cannon in that aforementioned pond about 3/4 of a mile away, just to totally disable it. They don't know how to use a cannon. They don't have any ammunition for it. It's just a way of really like sticking it to the army one last time. One of the soldiers who escaped says that they threw the cannon into the pond and burned its carriage also. Shortly after they went away, one Wilson of Captain it's a tough one. Shortly after they went away, one Wilson of Captain G's company crept from under some of the dead bodies and hardly seemed to be hurt at all. And this, to me, was a real like apocalypto situation where what is his name? Almost in the movie is he hides in these fields of bodies underneath a bunch of dead bodies to escape the Mayans who are trying to track him down. So you can imagine the level of gore and viscera, and this is in the humidity of the swamp. This is in the afternoon in Central Florida. It is, I believe, in the winter, but it's on December 28th, I think it is. But it almost makes it worse. It's all bad, top to bottom. He asked to go back to the fort, and I was going to follow him when, as he jumped over the breastwork, an Indian sprang from behind a tree and shot him down. So there's still like Seminole stragglers here. There's still dudes like just trying to see if there's anything left on the battlefield that they can take. And at least one warrior is still there. He sees them trying to escape and shoots this guy down. So no rest for the weary. I then lay quiet until 9 o'clock that night when De Courcy, the only living soul besides myself and I, started upon our journey. So he's linked up with Private Edwin De Courcy. They're going to work as a team now, and they're going to decide to go back to Fort Brooke. We knew it was nearest to go to Fort King, but we did not know the way, and we had seen enemies retreat in that direction. They've seen the Seminole go that way, so they're like, I don't care if Fort King is that way. We're not going that way. As I came out, I saw Dr. G lying stripped amongst the dead. The last I saw of him whilst living, he was kneeling behind the breastwork with 2 double-barrel shotguns by him, and he said, well, I have got 4 barrels for them. Captain G, after being severely wounded, cried out, I can give you no more orders, my lads. Do your best. I last saw a black Seminole spurn his body, saying an oath, that's one of their officers. He knew that who their officers were. They were, like we've specified again and again, but for good reason. I mean, they hated the officers. They wanted to unalive them, and they wanted to dishonor them as much as they could after doing so. Going back to the account, my comrade and myself got along quite well until the next day when we met until we met an Indian on horseback and with rifle coming up on the road. Our only chance was to separate, so we did so. It ends up being a good call. I took the right and he the left of the road. The Indian pursued him. Shortly afterwards, I heard a rifle shot, and after a little after, another. I concealed myself among some scrub and saw palmetto, and after a while saw the Indian pass looking for me. Suddenly, however, he put spurs to his horse and went off at a gallop towards the road. So it's a moment of just like, I don't know why this guy gave up when he did, but he just gets sick of looking for him at the opportune moment and goes away. It's inexplicable. Finishing up here, I made something of a circuit before I struck the beaten track again, meaning he went around, he kind of walked all over, so it'd be harder for them to track him. That night, I was a good deal annoyed by the wolves. I've checked this out, there were wolves in Florida at that time who had scented my blood. I mean, like this, I'm telling you, it just gets worse all the way through. There were wolves in Florida at the time. They scented his blood and they stayed on his trail all the way back to the fort. The wolves came very close to me. The next day, though, on the 30th, I reached the fort. So the battle occurred on December 28th. 2 days later, Ransom Clark reaches the fort. There will be, like I said, 2 other soldiers who reach the fort, one of whom will succumb to his wounds, but the other soldier did not leave a statement. All right, I'm going to check the chat real quick, see if we got any questions. Long live Osceola. Osceola has a lot of fans, man. Anyone that walks away from a scrap like that without a scratch or a blemish, they were a member of the crew. You mean they were part of the Seminole? Let's see. What month did this happen? December 28th. It's better than summertime, referring to like, yeah, this happened in the winter. It would still suck though. Nothing against Central Florida. I'm just saying. Nick Citron, $2 super chat. Thank you, sir. Howdy, HOKC. Thank you for all your efforts. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anyone practiced in making primitive tools, and who is your favorite nap? I know Josh is. Josh, if he's still in here. Josh McAllister, yeah. You'd have to ask Josh. I don't have a favorite. Who is my favorite napper? I'm my favorite napper. I don't know. I know what napping is. I'm just I don't know. Good question. Let's see. Platypusicus. I can do the Perry. I'm not sure what that means, Brandini. Y'all get into some crazy talk in the chat. I will name my firstborn son after you. You talking to me? I mean, Brandon's a good name, but sometimes it draws some hate. Let's see. There are panther and bear in Florida, along with cottonmouths and alligators. That's why I'm a little reticent to visit. I think the cannon was taken into the swamp. Yeah, we talked about that. Yes, absolutely. It was taken into the swamp and just thrown into that pond. Because like they really didn't have use for it. Yeah, it's a good cannon, but they don't have any use for it. Let's see. Everyone is still using muskets during this time location, right? Yes. This is about 20, 30 years before repeating rifles. Rifled muskets, if I'm not mistaken. I believe, right, because they're the army, I believe so. Your average citizen, I don't believe, would have a rifled musket, but I believe the army does. Black Seminoles were called Maroons. Yeah, I don't. Yes, but I don't even. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how specific that gets. I don't know if it's just a particular group of them within a group that's called Maroons. So I didn't want to use that term inappropriately. Not even like scared of like the PC nature of it. I'm just saying like I didn't want to mislabel. I'll have to look further into that. Brother, you won't be flagged for saying killed. No, I won't, dude. It's mostly like the first 10, 15 minutes of your stream. That's where you got to like watch it. And especially when I was starting live streaming, you got to watch it there. But the first 10, 15 minutes, you got to be kind of lame about it. And then if I say anything like unalived or something after that, I don't mean to. You just like get into the mode of talking that way. I watched enough. I'm not like a fan of the Whatever podcast. I got plenty of problems with them, but or whatever, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't sit around and watch the Whatever podcast, but they do talk like that, right? They'll say things that are terms of service appropriate. So sometimes it just leaks into your everyday YouTube vernacular, unfortunately. In North America, the beet wood for a bow is Osage orange. The best wood for a bow is Osage orange. It's called Bodark. I'll have to look into that. I used to make a lot of bows when I was a kid. F, fighting in the swamp. That would be no bueno. Yeah, no, that's like my worst case scenario. What's up, Alex with the K Jones? Let's see. I'm a little confused by the guy on the horse. And that's all he says. I am too. I don't understand why this warrior just bailed on what he was doing. Maybe he's just tired. I mean, maybe his blood sugar's low. That's legit, you know? Okay, I think I've just kind of cursorily scanned the chat. So I'll return if I didn't see your chat. I'm going to go to Alligator's statement and then Pacheco's statement. These are both short. Okay, Alligator's statement. Chief Alligator, the guy who harangued his warriors, which is probably my favorite part of the episode. This is his statement from the Seminole side. Just as day was breaking. So he doesn't say like specifically what time, but he's, like that's a little earlier than 8 o'clock, but just so you know, early morning, because Pacheco is going to say something a little different. Alligator says, just as day was breaking, we moved out of the swamp into the pine barren. I counted by direction of Jumper, Oteamathla, 180 warriors. So the Seminole have 180 warriors on their side. Upon approaching the road, each man chose his position on the west side. Opposite, on the east side, there was a pond. So what he means is like they lined up on the west side because there was a pond a little ways away on the right side. Every warrior was protected by a tree or secreted in the high palmettos. He's the only one that mentions the palmettos, too. About 9 o'clock in the morning, the command approached. In advance, some distance off, was an officer on a horse who Micanopy said was the captain. He knew him personally. He had been his friend in Tampa. This is true. Micanopy had met Officer Dade already. So soon, all the soldiers were opposite between us and the pond, perhaps 20 yards off, and Jumper gave the whoop, and Micanopy fired the first rifle, the signal agreed upon when every Indian rose and fired, which laid upon the ground dead more than half of the white men. So all these accounts are very consistent. He might be off by like an hour or so on the timing, but yes, the first volley is by and large the most consequential. It takes out half or more of the guys, right? It is devastating. The cannon was discharged several times, but the men who loaded it were shot down as soon as the smoke cleared away. Another interesting aspect, yes, they targeted the cannon crew as well. Like immediately, they took out the whole first cannon crew. The guys that were firing the grape shot are actually the second line of the cannon crew, because as soon as the Seminole understood what was going on, they killed all the cannon crew, all the varsity cannon crew, and then the JV guys, the B team, had to swoop in and take over. Their balls, that's a stop. Okay, he means they're musket balls. He means they're musket balls. The musket balls passed over our heads. The soldiers shouted and whooped, and the officers shook their swords and swore. So he doesn't know what they're saying, but he sees this panic overtake the entire company. There was a little man, a great brave, who shook his sword at the soldiers and said, "Gee damn," that's what he says. No rifle ball could hit him. He's talking about Gardner, Lieutenant Gardner, Captain Gardner. Captain Gardner, yes, he wasn't a big dude, at least in this account, but he's known as the god of war. He was known by his classmates at West Point as the god of war. So this dude had a rep before he even got here, and he's a punchy dude. He's down to scrap for sure. He's just like he's throughout this whole, he's eventually killed at the very end, but this whole time, all the account or Gardner's or Ransom McClark's account, everything that we have about Gardner says that this dude was unshakable and was that way till the very end. Where are we at here? As we returned to the swamp, supposing that all were dead, an Indian came up and said that the white men were building log forts. So he's talking about the initial retreat. Jumper and myself, with 10 warriors, returned. As we approached, we saw 6 men behind 2 logs placed above one another, the little fort that they've built, with a cannon a short distance off. This they discharged at us several times, but we avoided it by dodging behind trees just as they applied fire. We soon came near as the cannonballs went over us. They had guns, but no powder. The whole time, the soldier's ammo is running lower and lower, meaning the shot, the powder, and the musket balls. We soon came near as the musket balls went over us. They had guns, but no powder. We looked into the boxes after the battle, and we found that they were all empty. When I got inside the log pen, meaning this is like after the battle, when I got inside the log pen, there was 3 white men still alive, whom the black Seminoles put to death after a conversation in English, meaning that's when they chided and derided them. There was a brave man in the pen who would not give up. He seized an Indian, Jumper's cousin, and then took away his rifle and with one blow beat his brains in, then ran some distance up the road, which is like respect, dog, like, yeah, that's the way to go out. But 2 Indians on horseback overtook him and, afraid to approach him, they stood at a distance and shot him down. Like they there's an air of like, listen, we don't want any more trouble with this guy. Let's take him out from a distance. That's sad, but I mean, if you're going to go out that way. The firing had ceased and all was quiet when we returned to the swamp about noon. So this is 2 or 3 hours. Okay. It's a couple hours and it's done. So noon, a little afternoon is what we're looking at. We left many black Seminoles upon the ground looking at the dead men. This is the account of them combing through all of the bodies and making sure everyone's dead and taking everything that they can. 3 warriors were killed and 5 wounded. So a minuscule, comparatively minuscule loss for the force of, it ends up being, with the additional Seminole that arrive, other Seminole accounts talk about Alligator's speech and additional Seminole arriving. And with those additional Seminole pressing, probably not quite 200 Seminole warriors, but close to 200. Now, let me check the chat one more time. Any questions about that one? Nick Citron's a new member. Thanks, man. Thanks, dog. We're getting member. I'm putting new member stuff up all the time. We're getting a lot of stuff. A lot of updates. A lot of what am I trying to say? I've spoken everyone else's words. I've been reading for too long, and now I can't come up with my own words. A lot of upgrades. Big stuff coming. The Spanish called them Maroons, but the Spanish left after a while. They did. Andrew Jackson hated this. Andrew Jackson hated a lot of people. I think Andrew Jackson's a super interesting guy, so I'm not like chiding on him right now, but he hated the Spanish. He hated the English. He hated the Seminole. He hated a lot of people. He could party though. God of War is a hell of a handle. It's a good one. If you're going to have a handle. While Dade was being ambushed, Osceola and other warriors killed the reservation agent at the fort. Right. We talked about that just before we got started. Wiley Thompson was the Indian agent at Fort King. And I said before, if you just imagine what you think Wiley Thompson looks like, that's what he looks like for sure. And Osceola made a whole point. It's very, I mean this in a complimentary way, but very like Soprano-esque, mafioso-esque, just like, I have a score to settle. Very like spaghetti Western-esque. Like, I have a score to settle. Sorry, I'm gonna be a little bit late, but this has to be done. And it was done. I mean, I've never even heard, I'm sure it's happened many times. I've never even heard of a scalp being divvied up like that. I'm sure it's happened, but that's the first that I've heard of it. Jackson hated the Creek and the Southern Indians because of Fort Mims. Yes, Jackson wasn't afraid to let you know who he didn't like. Yes, great point, Bamadiana. Jackson went through a lot of abuse from the British when he was a child and lost several family members to the British. Absolutely. And he married a woman who had been married before, and everyone would call her a hussy. And anytime he heard about it, he would challenge them to a duel. So you can't say that he wasn't the real deal. Do I agree with everything he did? Do I think he was cool? Like, no. But you can't say that he wasn't the real deal. Lots of bad blood between the Indians and the agents. Yes, that's true, especially in this case. Sometimes with like the Apache and the Navajo, some of the agents really fought for, some of the agents were trying. Sometimes they seem semi-naive. They did get several, I believe, Quakers to work the Apache and Navajo reservations in the hopes that like they're being kind of a detached third party and being, inherently peaceable and pacifistic, that would help kind of pacify the situation there. But in a lot of times the agents didn't know what they were getting into. They didn't even know what was in the best interest of these tribes. So they're just kind of like shooting in the dark. Let's see. Jackson's wife was named Rachel. He was very protective of her. Yeah. She wasn't a hussy. She wasn't at all. It was like political press today. Like, they were just merciless in the press. And so they were just really horrific to his wife in the press. Whether you like Jackson or not, they went way beyond the pale against his wife in the press. Let's see. St. Augustine is the oldest continual settlement in the U.S. That's true. A Catholic mission. I'm not Catholic, but I do have to give them their props for like essentially opening up the entire new world and like still having an influence today. Okay, I'm going to finish off this last account. Again, this is a short one. This is from Pacheco, Luis Pacheco. His account is extremely pertinent though, and we're going to do a whole separate live stream on him. Okay. From Pacheco, he mentions the battle starting about 10 o'clock in the morning. So there is some discrepancy, but such is the case with first-hand accounts. About 10 o'clock in the morning, while I was with the advance guard, Captain Fraser and I turned aside to examine an old gray horse we found by the road, and finding it worthless, like, this is kind of hard. This is what it was like, though, guys. Like, they would just be like, well, this horse is worthless, and they would just leave it there. We returned to the road and nearly overtook the advance guard when I heard a single rifle shot, and I looked back to see if someone was shooting game, but just in time to see Major Dade fall just in front of me, shot in the chest. Although this was perfectly open country and I had just looked carefully for Indians ahead, the country was now filled with large numbers of them on our left, coming for us with the war whoop. I immediately threw down my gun and laid behind a tree, very much frightened. And he's not a soldier. Like, this isn't his job to fight. So, like, I mean, wouldn't you do that? Continuing on, as I could, excuse me, as I could speak the Seminole language, I begged each one for my life, as they leveled their guns at me, and they were not a few, meaning there was a bunch of Seminole, and they all leveled their guns at him. They told me that I was a slave and was doing what I was bidden. Excuse me. I told them that I was a slave and was doing what I was bidden. Finally, Jumper, the chief in command, and that's what Pacheco thinks he's the chief in command. Really, there's 3 chiefs in command. Jumper, the chief in command, interfered and ordered as well as he could that I should not be shot. But even after this, one Indian was determined to kill me. But fortunately, another Indian got his rifle ball stuck in his gun and ran away. When the other Indians saw this, they became frightened and they all ran. When Jumper again took me and put me under guard, meaning one Seminole had his rifle jam. I don't know, it freaked him out, I guess, and he took off running. We don't know what happened there. But when this guy freaks out, all the other Seminole that are pointing their guns at Pacheco freak out. Then Oteamathla, also known as Jumper, grabs Pacheco and says, "You're with me now." But as we see again, the chief's power is not total because there's one warrior that is dead set on killing Pacheco. We'll see that here. The same Indian, though, still assured me that when he came back, he would kill me yet. But luckily for me, he was shot by the whites. So this is in that interim where the Seminole have made their initial retreat, and the Seminole have already taken Pacheco back to their kind of headquarters about 3/4 of a mile away. And Jumper says, Oteamathla says, like, okay, I'm going to keep you safe. This other warrior says, like, I'm going to come back and kill you anyways, because the chief doesn't have full charge of everything. If this warrior really wants to kill him, he can, he's entitled to it, having gone along with the war party. But he says, luckily for Pacheco, this guy was shot on the second attack, so it all worked out. The battle lasted from about 10 o'clock in the morning until nearly sunset. So it's a little discrepancy there too. He says it started a little later and it ran a little later. But from here, Pacheco goes on to live with the Seminole, and he has this whole storied life that really merits its own live stream. But you can see the accounts, by and large, as eyewitness accounts go, line up very well. It really gives a nice, what is that called? What is it called at the end of a book? I don't know. I hate those things. I hate it's a postscript, right? I hate the intros to a book where they're like, I grew up in Oakland, California, and that's why I was inspired to write this book. And this is what my dad did, and this is what my mom did. It's like, shut up, bro. There's so much of that. I read a lot of these books, and there's so much of that. Like, I don't care, dude. Just start talking about the Comanche. Either way, this is a nice postscript to the battle that talks about the aftermath in much more depth than we were able to cover in the episode itself. But this is the dessert. The main course in the episode really dives into the intensity of this. One of the most intense episodes that we've done. And I'm really excited to open up this kind of new territory for us. We've gone a little bit into the Seminole Wars before, but we tend to concentrate so much on the Southwest and the Old West that I think it merits expanding on the continent. We've got more stories coming from Maine and Florida, as well as all our traditional stuff. The next one we have is the Battle of Tres Castillos, which is in Chihuahua, Mexico. Miserable as well, guys. That's my whole life, is just reading these miserable stories all day. But that's cool. I love what I do. An epilogue. Yeah, thanks, Josh McAllister. I did not pay attention in English class. You know why? Because I was like, I speak English. Like, I don't have to pay attention here. Didn't know I'd end up being a writer. Let's see. Any questions on the first-hand accounts, on the battle itself? I'm going to scroll through here. What time are we? Oh, we're already at an hour and 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go another like 10 minutes. Sorry to make this one short, but I am up against it with getting the episode out. And I will be back. Let's see. Today's Wednesday. So tomorrow should be the episode. Friday, Sam is coming back. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. Maybe like cowboys throughout history, like how cowboys started basically with like, I don't know, man, like ancient Crete in a way. Certainly like the Moors, and then taking it all the way through to cowboy cultures throughout the world today, because we talk so much about cowboys and the early iterations of cowboys in our episodes. Like, I think it would behoove everyone to understand the uniqueness of the American cowboy, the cowboy diaspora throughout the world, the Paniolos and the Gauchos, the cowboys in Australia and Canada. So, and then throughout the history, I think they look at the Knights, look at the Mongols, look at the Huns, would be very interesting. So that might be what we're doing. But Sam will be back on Friday. Everybody loves Sam. I love Sam. So that'll be fun. Then this weekend, I think we'll do Dempsey versus Willard, the boxing match that kind of cap-ended the Old West. I just have to figure out how to share a video on Streamlab. If anybody knows, let me know. But any other questions on the Dade Massacre? I think this one's really bad because it's one of those situations where they think it's going to be a self-deletion mission, right? Like they're just like, sorry, this is getting my eyes. They think it's going to be a self-deletion mission where, they don't have a chance of making it. And usually if you think that, you're like, all right, well, like it'll work out for them. If this is a movie, it would work out in the end, right? They would make it all the way through. But in fact, at the end of this movie, everyone just dies. That's kind of it. It's a horror movie. It's not like a real hero's tale. Let's see. Vaqueros is where cowboys came from. Yes, but even the vaqueros are descended in a lot of ways. The Spanish horse tradition was really taken from the Moors. By and large, the Moors brought the horses to the Iberian Peninsula. It's a whole thing. I think the Gauchos get severely underrated. The Paniolos do. The Mexican cowboys, the vaqueros, caballeros. And honestly, Alta California, like California was the hub of cowboys before the tradition spread, eastward across the continent. People hate it. You can hate it all you want. I get it. But as a native Californian, I got to tell you, them's the facts that the American cowboy essentially started. Damn, what is going on? I got to get this thing cut, man. It just like flops all over the place. It started in California. That's just how it is. You can argue me in the chat. You can bring me your hate. It's totally cool. I love it. Maybe that'll be the name of the episode, like the how cowboys started in California. I'll piss everybody off. Let's see. Were the Seminoles an established people, or were they newly formed people due to the conflicts? To my understanding, I mean, there's several bands within the Seminole, but they are a long-standing tribe. That's just my understanding, though. I'm open to being wrong. Yeah, okay. We are a group of smaller tribes from the north who joined together after the Creek War. Okay, so they're a coalescence of peoples after the Creek War. We need to cover the Creek War as well. I'm fully aware. But I also don't want to talk about stuff that I don't know about. I don't know that much about the Creek War. Nick, I went to the University of Alabama for a little while. Oh, man. The whole Bama fans are a whole thing. You guys, you can't even be around a Bama fan if they lose that day. Oh, let's see. I'm thinking about getting some like background music to play during got moths in here too. What do you guys think about like background music during the chats? Wasn't Chief Wildcat at the Dade ambush? All I know of is Oteo Mathla, who's Jumper, Chief Alligator, and Micanopy. I don't know what Micanopy means, though. Let's see. There's a lot of chats here. If I missed your chat, just put it back in the chat now and I will see it at the bottom. To be nicknamed the God of War at West Point is wild. That dude must have been a real G. He was a real G. He's one of those dudes that you could kind of focus the movie around because it's very Spartan-esque. Like he didn't even trip about being killed in the battle. Like he was just like fought to the very end. Let's see. I also enjoy the feeling of hot breath of my enemy. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. I'm going to do another 5 minutes and I got to scoot out of here. Let's see. Went to the University of Alabama. Got that. Also, I'm going to have my friend Jeff come on, who's a professional dog trainer, to talk about what dogs exactly the conquistadors used, how they used them, and how they trained them, like how they got these dogs so obedient, yes, but so ferocious. Friday at what time? Oh, the live stream on Friday will be at 8 p.m. Eastern because Sam is not a night owl like me. Sam's a normal person. Well, as far as his sleep habits go. Just kidding, Sam. Sam is a normal person. I am a bit of an enigma. Let's see. That's a joke, by the way. Anybody who calls themselves an enigma is solipsistic idiot or whatever. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not calling myself that. I'm looking at the chats too. Let's see here. I think I'm about caught up, so that's cool. That's good. That'll be a great episode. Dog training. Love it. Yeah, he's been dog training for a long time. And just can really, I don't know how they train those dogs. I can't imagine. So it'll be really interesting to see exactly how they did it, because these dogs were their own little conquistador celebrities. They had like kill counts for them. They had their own little armor. They were basically part of the company. They got paid. Like they didn't get paid money, but they were on the payroll. Let's see here. And there's like legendary dogs like Bruto, a couple others, and conquistador history. They're legendary because they killed the most people. And Bruto was like such a savage that he ended up getting killed by, I forget the name of the tribe. I can't believe I'm forgetting about it. Maybe the Susquehanna. But he saw the tribe across the river, and this dog just jumps in the river and jumps and tries to swim across the river. And he's just lost his mind. He's lost his little doggy mind. And the conquistadors are like, oh, crap, there goes Bruto. And the Susquehanna shoot him down, and like he doesn't make it. They shoot him when he gets on the beach. But the conquistadors are like, damn, like we can't just let Bruto outdo us, and they keep fighting, right? But those dogs were crazy. Micanopy means something like chief. Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about did we say panther? Who did we say? Some sweet names in the Seminole, though, right? I've said this before. A lot of tribes have like pretty cool names. It'll be like Running River, Chief Alligator, whatever. The Comanche have some pretty vulgar names. Even Quanah is named basically Stinker or Stink. They'll say, oh, it's odor, fragrance. It's not odor or fragrance. It's stinker. Okay. Guys, I don't want to make this one too short, but I got to scoot out of here because I got a note from the editor saying that the episode is ready. That means the first cut of the episode is ready. So a little behind the scenes, I have to take this first cut, watch the whole episode, and take detailed notes on what we want to change, and then send it back and do the first revision. Usually it's just one, but then we got to put it up. So it's a whole process. It takes some time. It ain't digging ditches, so it ain't hard, but it takes some time. Let's see. I'm going to take one last look. Brandini says demon dogs used to, I think I have to say unalive here, used to unalive children is not cool. Don't care. I'm not advocating for the dogs, right? I totally get it. I totally agree with you. it's a much more the actual subject of the conquistadors is much more nuanced, right? But nah, man, like I don't disagree, but virtually all of history is disagreeable, right? Like the Dade Massacre in and of itself is disagreeable. If we saw this happen, we'd be horrified on all counts, right? But it's informational, it's not advocational. So that's all I'm saying is it's worth kind of looking into the how and the why and the who and the where. And a lot of times so that this doesn't happen again. But I think it would be worth looking into so that we have a holistic understanding of what happened. But it's certainly not advocating. And Jeff does not train killer dogs. Okay, he trains like we work in Austin and San Antonio, so like labradoodles and stuff. Though he had like a cane corso, and that was pretty freaky. Really sweet dog, but freaky. I am loaded with useless information, says Bamadiana. You and me both. Look at today. Our dogs fall from the sky now? Our dogs fall from the sky. In Texas, they don't. Everything else falls from the sky in Texas, but not dogs. Though Texas has a massive animal shelter overcrowding problem, it is terrible. So if you're looking for a dog in Texas, adopt one. I'll be doing that soon. Let's see. I think that's our little public service announcement for tonight. You learned loads of stuff today. I'm glad to help, Nick. I'm just getting caught up, making sure I'm not leaving anybody. Micanopy, my relatives are from the Miccosukee on Big Cypress reservations. Oh, so you're a Seminole, I'm guessing. Don't want to assume. When I assume, I make an ass out of you and I, in the great words of Dale Gribble. Dale's my favorite character. Dale's my favorite character on King of the Hill. My least favorite, Peggy. Let's see. Thanks, Brandon. Awesome. Take care and be safe. Thanks, Maximus. Good seeing you tonight. Carl Karsnak, what's up, bro? Good to see you again. Greetings from North Florida, man. Good to see you, man. I'm just closing out, so I'm going to skip out of here in a minute, but I'm glad you made it back, dude. Good to see you again. In terms of how I'm saying we come a long way from, Brandini is saying I've come a long way. Society has come a long way from using war dogs. True, but have you ever seen the Malinois that the military uses? Obviously, very, very smart, fantastic dogs, but they don't play. They call them hair missiles. Okay. All right. I think I'm caught up. If I missed your chat at all, come back for... Oh, wait. Did I get a super chat? Oh, geez. Bamadiana, $5. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bamadiana. Always love the lives. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, like I said, I think we'll have an episode out tomorrow, so I'm going to skip, or not skip, but that'll be the focus of tomorrow night. Then Friday, we're on for sure, and then I'll get some weekend ones as well. Cry havoc and let's slip the dogs of war. One of my favorite Shakespeare quotes. Henry the Fifth, Eighth, Henry the Fifth. Not that smart. Okay. All right, guys. I am caught up. I want to thank you all again for coming out and hanging out. This is the highlight of my day. Love seeing y'all out here. We'll have an episode up tomorrow, live stream on Friday. Sam is coming back. The return of Sam. Then content throughout the week, shorts every day. We'll have a new side story coming out as well. And then Apache, the Battle of Tres Castillos after that. So this is going to be a big week. Got a lot of seriously cool content. I'm looking forward to you guys checking it out. And I'm going to go finish this episode now. So without further ado, great seeing y'all. Have a good night. God bless and stay safe. We'll see you soon. Bye.